USCIS is no longer the agency that just handles green cards and citizenship. For the first time ever, they are creating their own armed officers with guns, badges, the authority to arrest people, serve warrants, and even use deadly force. That means that when you walk into a USCIS office for your interview, you could now be walking into a federal building with agents that have the same powers as ICE or Border Patrol. And the government is not saying how many of these officers there will be, how they will be trained, or how far they will go with their new powers. This is, of course, a massive change. So let's talk about what's really happening, who could be affected, and how you should proceed with your immigration case. So let's break this down carefully, because what has happened at USCIS is unlike anything we have ever seen before. For 20 years, USCIS has simply been a benefits agency. They decide green cards, work permits, and asylum and citizenship. And they've always had fraud investigators, but those investigators could not make arrests. That separation was very intentional. Congress wanted families to feel safe stepping into a USCIS office without feeling like they were stepping into a police station. But now, that line is blurring. The new rule that was announced earlier this month creates a special line of officers called special agents. And this is not just a title change. It puts them in the same job category as the FBI or as Secret Service. In other words, we are now talking about real law enforcement agents inside USCIS for the first time in history. So what powers will they have? The rule is surprisingly broad. These agents can serve warrants, they can arrest people for immigration violations, they can even arrest people for certain non-immigration crimes, they can issue expedited removal orders, and yes, the regulation even authorizes them to carry firearms and use lethal force. The wording of the rule is also very vague. It says that these agents can only act within the jurisdiction of USCIS, but that phrase is not defined anywhere. Think about how many types of cases and areas that USCIS touches. Marriage green cards, asylum, citizenship, work visas. That's tens of millions of applications every single year. So when lawyers like me read language that is this open-ended and vague, it raises real questions about where these officers are going to show up and what are the bounds of their authority. And here's one more concerning thing. This rule was not rolled out with public debate. There was no comment period, no hearings, and no revisions. The rule was published as final, and it takes effect on October 6th. That means the change has already been made before the public has had a chance to weigh in. Now, what do these new USCIS special agents mean to your case? Will you see armed officers at interviews? Could they show up to your home? And what if you make a mistake on your case? Will that be treated as fraud? Here's what we know. This rule technically gives officers the ability to do all of these things in theory, but there is no sign that they're going to be stationed at every office or come knocking on doors. Arrests at interviews have already been happening in some limited circumstances, but typically only in situations where somebody may already have a prior order of deportation, a criminal conviction, or very clear fraud in their case. That has not changed. And you can rest assured that committing an honest mistake on your paperwork is not the same as committing fraud, because the requirements for proving fraud have not changed. So what does USCIS say that these officers are for? The director has explained that the goal is to go after persons where people are trying to cheat the system on a big scale. For example, organized marriage fraud schemes, fake employers sponsoring dozens of people, cases with a national security concern. He described these officers more as investigators or detectives, not regular police. But we don't know exactly how far they're going to push their powers or test their limits. What I can tell you for certain is still that the law has not changed. Families are still eligible to apply for green cards. Persons eligible for humanitarian relief are still eligible to apply, even with visa overstays or illegal entries. Approvals are still happening every single day for thousands of people, including for people who are my own clients. So I would say that if you don't have any major issues in your case, you should still plan to attend your interview. And of course, discuss this with your attorney. Make sure you're prepared, make sure you bring your documents, and make sure you know what the weak spots are in your case and be ready to address them. That is still the best way to keep your case on track in this new environment. On the other hand, if you have a more complicated case, it may raise some red flags and more questions about how you should proceed. You should definitely work with an immigration lawyer, and if you already have one, make sure you discuss all of these concerns thoroughly. Some examples of cases that might need a lawyer include if you have ever had a prior deportation or removal order, missed court, or were told to leave and did not. If you have arrests or convictions, even of dismissed cases. If an old case involves misrepresentation or fraud, or you think a past lawyer may have filed something that was not true. If you previously filed a marriage case that fell apart at the interview or had several inconsistencies. If you entered without inspection more than once, used somebody else's ID, or have multiple entries that are hard to explain. Or if you've gotten letters from USCIS or ICE and were not sure what they meant. These are just some of the situations where you do not want to go it alone, especially with this rule in effect. My name is Moumita Rahman, and I have been practicing immigration law for the past 15 years. If you would like my help on your case, give us a call at 212-248-7907. Even though we are based in New York, we work with clients all over the United States. So as long as we can help you with your case, we would love to hear from you. Now, before you go, here's another big change that you need to know about. USCIS has not just armed its officers, they've also updated their rules so even when your marriage or family-based case is still pending, you might still get sent straight to court. One small mistake that could be fixable could now lead to a denial even before you get the chance to prove your case. I explain exactly what's changed, who is at most risk, and what you can do to protect yourself now. I'll include a link to that video here. Click and I'll see you there.